This is the story of ordinary men who refused to stay ordinary. Farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers. On one cold morning in 1775, they stood in front of the most powerful army the world had ever seen. And they did not run. They had no army, no navy, no king. They had only an idea. And that idea would go on to shake every throne on earth. This is how America was born. By the 1760s, the American colonies were thriving, self-reliant, hard-working, and used to governing their own lives. Then Britain, drowning in war debt, decided the colonies should pay for it. Parliament passed the Stamp Act, taxing nearly every piece of paper in colonial life. No vote, no voice, no representation. The colonists answered with 5 words that would echo through history. No taxation without representation. In 1773, colonists boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 90,000 pounds of tea into the sea. A direct act of defiance against an empire. Britain struck back hard, shutting down Boston's port, stripping away self-rule. But instead of crushing the rebellion, Britain lit it on fire. For the first time, the colonies stood together. 12 of them sent delegates to Philadelphia to form the First Continental Congress. Compromise was still possible. It would not stay possible for long. April 18th, 1775. British troops marched out of Boston under cover of darkness, aiming to seize colonial weapons and arrest rebel leaders. They didn't count on Paul Revere. The regulars are coming out. By dawn, 70 colonial militiamen stood waiting on Lexington's village green. Farmers and shopkeepers, facing trained soldiers of the British Empire. No one knows who fired first. But when the smoke cleared, 8 Americans lay dead. At Concord, colonial militia fought back. And as word spread, thousands more poured in from surrounding towns, turning the British retreat into a bloody 11-mile gauntlet of fire. By nightfall, this was no longer a protest. It was a war. 2 months later, at Bunker Hill, American militia inflicted devastating losses on British regulars before finally running out of ammunition. Britain took the hill, but paid for it in blood. This would not be a short war. In Philadelphia, a 33-year-old Virginian named Thomas Jefferson was handed an impossible task: put into words why free men had the right to govern themselves. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, not just a break from a king, a new idea of what a nation could be, built not on bloodlines or crowns, but on the simple belief that all men are created equal, and that governments answer to the people, not the other way around. Words on paper. Now, they needed an army willing to die defending them. By winter 1776, George Washington's army was falling apart, starving, unpaid, deserting by the hundreds. The revolution stood on the edge of collapse. On Christmas night, Washington gambled everything, leading his men across a frozen river in a brutal storm to strike Hessian forces at Trenton by surprise. It worked, a small victory, but it proved one enormous thing: this army could still fight. This cause was still alive. The following winter at Valley Forge, nearly 2,000 soldiers died, not from bullets, but from cold, hunger, and disease. And yet the men who survived came out harder, sharper, more determined than ever. This is where an army of farmers became soldiers. This is where a revolution became unbreakable. Fall of 1777. A British army marching south from Canada was surrounded near Saratoga, New York. On October 17th, General Burgoyne surrendered nearly 6,000 men, the first time a major British force had ever been defeated outright. News reached Paris. France, eager to strike at its old rival, threw its full weight behind the Americans. Ships, weapons, soldiers. A colonial rebellion had just become a world war.
Bring me the wax.
By 1781, British General Cornwallis had dug into Yorktown, Virginia, expecting rescue by sea. Instead, a French fleet arrived first, sealing his only way out. Washington raced south. Together with French forces, they laid siege to Yorktown, Allied cannons pounding the British lines night after night. On October 19th, 1781, with no hope of escape, Cornwallis surrendered his entire army. Legend says their band played a tune called "The World Turned Upside Down." It had. 2 years later, the Treaty of Paris made it official. Britain recognized the independence of the United States, a nation that 8 years earlier had no army, no navy, and no allies. And then came the moment that stunned the world. George Washington, the most powerful man in America, commander of a victorious army, laid down his sword, resigned his commission, and went home to his farm. He could have crowned himself king. He chose to become a citizen. It was this single act, more than any battle ever fought, that proved to the world this revolution was different. Not a fight for one man's power, a fight for an idea. It began with farmers standing their ground on a frozen green, facing an empire that never believed they could win. They had no guarantee of victory, only a conviction that free people have the right to govern themselves. That conviction became a nation. And nearly 250 years later, that fire still burns in every American who believes that freedom is worth standing for.